All right, well, welcome back, and hopefully you had a good little break there. Want to kind of wrap up here, First and Second Kings, and so from chapter 12 of First Kings to the end of Second Kings takes us all the way to the exile in Babylon. And the last thing we read in Second Kings is how one of the kings who was taken captive by the Babylonians is released from prison, and he's able to eat at the king's table. The date of that would be about 560. And so, we're going to stretch from 930 all the way to 560, and we're going to do it really quickly. In fact, there's really only one or two things I'm going to tell you about. So when Jeroboam, so you remember Rehoboam is the king of the southern kingdom. He is Solomon's son. And when he comes to the power to take Solomon's place, the people make a request of him that he would lighten their load, that he wouldn't be as heavy-handed as Solomon. And Rehoboam says, well, give me 3 days to think about it. He asks Solomon's advisors, and Solomon says, yeah, your father ruled very heavy-handedly. And so go ahead and give them a break, go easy on them, they'll be loyal to you, and you'll enjoy their loyalty all of your days. And then he asked his peers, and his peers told him, no, you need to be even tougher than your father was, that you need to have a heavier hand. He listened to his peers. He announced to the people that he was going to be even stricter, harsher, more exacting than his father was. They said, we got nothing to do with you. They rebelled, and Rehoboam is left with just the tribe of Judah. The people of the north, all the other tribes, they make a guy by the name of Jeroboam their king. He is always known as Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Okay, so Jeroboam, son of Nebat. And the reason why he's referred to as the son of Nebat, it's a way to emphasize that he's not of the line of David. So as you read through 1st and 2nd Kings, you'll find a lot of reference to him. It's always Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Now, God had made Jeroboam a really amazing promise. God had told Jeroboam that if he walks in his ways, I'll go ahead and read it for you. It's in 1 Kings chapter 11. And this is what the Lord says. I will take you, and you shall reign over all that your soul desires, and you shall be king over Israel. And if you will listen to all that I command you, and will walk in my ways, and do what is right in my eyes by keeping my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, I will be with you and will build you a sure house, as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. And I will afflict the offspring of David because of this, but not forever. And so he has a very David-like promise, Jeroboam does. And he's set up. He's got a promise from God. He's got the loyalty of the people. All he has to do is walk in the ways of the Lord, walk in the ways of David, keep the covenant, and he's got God's promise of a dynasty. And instead, he's fearful that what's going to happen is that, well, remember, where's the temple? The temple is in Jerusalem. Where's Jerusalem? Jerusalem is in Judah. So what happens is that Jeroboam is fearful that the people are going to go from the north, Israel, and it's also referred to as Ephraim because that was the largest tribe. He's afraid that the people are going to go from the north and go up to Jerusalem. I know when we think going north to south, we think of going down south, but Jerusalem was up in the mountains. And so even when you were coming from the north, you always thought of going up to Jerusalem. And so he's afraid that the people, his people, are going to make the journey to Jerusalem, go up to Jerusalem, and that when they're there worshiping the Lord in that beautiful temple, that Rehoboam is going to win them back. That Rehoboam is going to convince them to return to him, and they're going to be influenced by Rehoboam to conspire against Jeroboam and to kill him. And that Rehoboam will be able to reunite the people under his kingship because the temple is in Jerusalem and everybody's going to be going to Jerusalem to worship the Lord. So Jeroboam is afraid that even though God promised him this kingdom, a dynasty even, he's afraid that he is going to lose it to Rehoboam because they're going to go to Jerusalem to worship the Lord in the temple there. So do you know what Jeroboam does? He builds alternative temples. And so he built temples in the north. He built two of them in particular, one at Bethel and one at Dan. Dan was really far up in the north. He builds two temples there. And that way the people don't have to go to Jerusalem. And he actually brings in golden calves at each temple. And he says, these are your gods who brought you up out of Egypt. And then he institutes his own priesthood. Rather than the priesthood that came from the Levites, he makes people his own priests, and he has his own prophets, builds his own altars, all of this stuff. This becomes known as the sin of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, because God didn't authorize any of this stuff. He's doing all of this stuff out of fear that the people are going to reject him once they go down to Jerusalem to worship the Lord. So even though the Lord is the one who promised him this kingdom, yet he doesn't trust the Lord, and he builds these alternative worship sites. And with this, especially with the golden calves, then there comes a lot of Canaanite worship practices that are brought into the worship practices of the northern kingdom. And it's gonna filter down into the southern kingdom as well. And this is a horrible thing. From what Jeroboam does, it is a very small step to worshiping Baal, the storm god, and Ashtaroth, his female counterpart. And so as we read through the rest of 1 Kings and 2 Kings, what we see is that the sins of the kings grow grosser and grosser, amassing greater and greater sin. Every now and then there's a good one in there, but for the most part, the kings really lead the people astray, especially worshiping Baal and Ashtoreth. God will raise up prophets like Elijah and Elisha to try to call the people back, and yet the leadership is the kings are so persistent in doing evil, so persistent in walking in the ways of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that ultimately God raises up the Assyrians in 722, and they put an end to the northern kingdom. Again, Deuteronomic theology, Deuteronomic history, that the reason why the northern kingdom falls to Assyria is because the kings led them astray in worshiping other gods. And it's not simply that Assyria was bent on conquering the world. God had raised them up and is using them to bring judgment upon the northern kingdom. And when Assyria conquered the people, they transplanted them, they brought other people in. From this, we get a group known as the Samaritans, kind of a mixture of religions, not just a mixture of race, but a mixture of religions, still claiming to worship Israel's God, but by the southern kingdom kind of looked down upon as being very synchronistic. The southern kingdom is going to continue. The line of David will continue. God kept that promise, and we're going to get some good kings in there as you read through, but you'll also have some very corrupt kings, some kings that go astray and worship other gods. And eventually it gets to the place where God brings judgment in the form of the Babylonians in 587. And so 587 comes, the Babylonians enter into Jerusalem, they destroy it, tear down the temple, just like God had told Solomon would happen, and the people are taken captive into exile. And it closes with just the slimmest glimmer of hope. That's what I'm trying to say. It closes with just the slimmest glimmer of hope. 2 Kings chapter 25. Let me read the last paragraph to you. 2 Kings 25, beginning at verse 27. And in the 37th year of the exile of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, he was taken captive in 598. In the 12th month, on the 27th day of the month, Evil-Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, graciously freed Jehoiakim, king of Judah, from prison. And he spoke kindly to him and gave him a seat above the seats of the kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiakim put off his prison garments, and every day of his life he dined regularly at the king's table. And for his allowance, a regular allowance was given him by the king according to his daily needs as long as he lived. And that's the end of the Deuteronomic history. And so there's somewhere around 560 to 539, somewhere in that window. They're in captivity. They're trying to figure things out. Is there any hope for us? And this history helps explain this is how you got here. This is why you're here. You, your leaders especially, did not keep covenant, did not follow the laws of Moses. God stayed faithful. God executed the curses of the covenant. And out of that, there becomes a hope that maybe if they are obedient, if they start keeping covenant in exile, God will bring them back home. And that there'll be a new temple, a new Davidic king, that there'll be blessing in the land once again. That becomes the hope. Well, that's it for today. That's it for Deuteronomic theology. We won't soon forget it on the Deuteronomic history. Where we're going to go from here is for Thursday, we're going to look at wisdom literature. And then the last week of class, we are going to spend that time looking at the prophetic literature. So have a great rest of the day and look forward to being seen by you our next class Thursday. Take care.